Hello everyone! One of the biggest questions that I get from new players is what deck should they use when they decide to start getting into constructed formats like Standard. Now a lot of times when you ask that question online, people are going to point to a mono red deck. Mono red is relatively wildcard inexpensive and fairly easy to pilot as well, and gives some good experience seeing some of the other meta decks and getting a better understanding of what you actually want to play. Now with that in mind, I've constructed this mono red deck with absolutely no rare or mythic wildcards. It's only commons and uncommons, so it's going to be very budget friendly for new players who haven't built up their collection. And it's also very powerful and can perform very well on the ladder. Let's talk a little bit about some of the cards that we're using. Kamano is great. It's going to provide us value over the first 3 turns if we can get it out on turn 1. We're going to deal some damage to our opponent, we're going to grow one of our creature threats, and then it's going to come back to the battlefield as a hasty creature, letting us get some additional power through to our opponents in terms of damage, as well as building up our board state. Monastery Swiftspear has haste and prowess. Those prowess triggers are going to grow it as well to deal some additional damage to our opponent's face. We also have Phoenix Chick. This is a great hasty threat with potential to come back from the graveyard in the late game to deal some additional damage. Closing off our 1-drops, we are ending with Play with Fire. This is 2 damage to any target, but we're going to get some additional value in terms of that scry if we deal it to our opponent's face. Now, going into the 2 mana slots, we've got Blazing Crescendo. This is going to help our creature spells by growing a creature larger as we're trying to connect for combat damage. It's also going to push us forward by giving us that top card of our library to play until the end of turn. Can use that to find a land if we need one. We can use that to find another burn spell to try and close out the game. Electrostatic Infantry is going to be a growing threat over the course of the game. With Trample, his damage is always going to matter, and those +1/+1 counters synergizing really well with all the instants and sorceries that we're looking to cast. Lightning Strike is an auto-include, dealing 3 damage to any target. We can use that to either burn our opponent down or remove one of their pesky creatures, so that way we can get through more damage on attackers. Then we have Reckless Impulse, and we also have Ren's Resolve. Now these cards do exactly the same thing, just different names, and because they do the same thing, we actually have 5 total copies of this effect. Now, closing off this deck at its high mana slots, we've got Furnace Punisher. This is going to penalize some of those decks that are focused on having a lot of different colors and expensive mana bases, really punishing them with that 2 damage if they don't have their basic lands. Menace also makes it a very good attacker and much more difficult for our opponents to block, so we can get that damage in fairly simply. Now, to counter some of our opponent's legendary creatures, we have Furnace Reigns. Why would we worry about the big threats that our opponents are playing when they're spending all of their rare wildcards, when we can use our uncommon wildcard to steal it and hit them right in the face with it? So this is going to be absolutely great, and when we deal that combat damage, we're going to make a treasure token, which is even better. That could accelerate our mana just enough to get in our last burn spell and close out the game. And then finally, we have a Giant Cindermaw. Now this is a standout card in the deck. At 3 mana, it has a 4/3 stat line, which is great for a 3 mana creature. That's something you'll typically see in green. Having Trample, we're not afraid of swinging in with this, and we can actually connect and deal some damage through small blockers. And it prevents our opponents and us from gaining life, but since we have no way to gain life, this isn't going to negatively impact us, and our opponents could only benefit from life gain, as that's one of the biggest weaknesses of this deck. To finish things off, we're running 21 lands because we have a low mana curve. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like, and if you've been enjoying my content so far, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Let's go ahead and see how this does. Alright, here we are on the play. This looks like a hand that we can keep, so I'm going to go ahead and keep it. Let's start with the Monastery Swiftspear. Now, when we have the choice of the Swiftspear or the Phoenix Chick, we're going to go with the Swiftspear first. Alright. Let's play out the Crescendo. We find another Swiftspear. Can cast that next turn. Alright. Looks good. Now we've got a couple of choices. We're going to go with Kamano and the other Swiftspear. Opponent down at 12. Alright. We're gonna get that +1/+1 counter here. Swing out. Let's see if our opponent has any way of interacting with this. They might channel their land. Alright, 4 damage, yeah. That's fine. Let's go ahead and hit them with the Play with Fire. I do want to draw that land next turn. Opponent gains 2, loses 2, down at 8. Now we are worried about life gain now, so we're going to want to cast our Cindermaw. Knowing that they can do this at instant speed for life gain, we're going to do this pre-combat. Looks good. After here, we'll be able to swing in for 4. We can't pay to return the Phoenix Chick, but that's fine. Wandering Emperor. Gonna make a token, block a Swift Spear, maybe?
Let your blade do the talking.
That's fine by me. Opponent down at 5. We're in a really good spot now. Alright, there's Shieldred.
Guards, to me.
Okay, moving to our draw. Here's the Swift Spear. You've got a couple of different options. I think one of the most fun ones is going to be to steal Shieldred here. Now move to combat and swing out like this. Yep, they gotta block Shieldred. And we've got it. Alright, good game. Alright, here we are coming into the next game. Opponent goes first. This looks like an alright hand for us as well. We can go ahead and keep, especially on the draw. Hopefully we're going to see a creature for turn 2. Alright, another Lightning Strike. Nothing wrong with that. Go ahead and hit our opponent for 1. Opponent's starting with the Jetmir's Garden. That means I'm really happy to see Furnace Rains in hands here. Alright. We're going to play out our other enchantment here, deal an additional damage. We are going to miss some of that value off the +1/+1 counter, but that's okay. Yep, opponent gaining life. So they're playing one of the Reanimator type decks, or the ramp decks, looking for a Tally or a Traxa. Gotta be careful for their domain board wipe. Alright, looks good to me. Now, since we didn't see a land here, we're gonna go ahead and cast Reckless Impulse. There we go. Fixing our land drops for us. Swing in for 2, opponent down at 19. End of their turn, we can play with fire. Can also use this to deal with one of their threats. Alright. Opponent passing. Let's go ahead and hit them with the play with fire. Players can't gain life. That's going to be fantastic for us. Alright. Looks good. They discard a Tally. Alright. We're going to play out the Cindermaw first. This is to prevent any life gain that they have at instant speed. Some of the channel things. Opponent said, oops, maybe they forgot to channel first. Down at 14. This is pretty good. Now we do have 3 lightning strikes in hand. That's going to be 9 damage. If we can get our opponent down to 9, we should have the game. Alright, Ossification, yep, deal with the Cindermaw. I see how that's a big problem for them. Okay, 2 Furnace Rains. That's going to be great. Move to combat, swing out for 4. Opponent down at 10. We're getting really close now. Alright, they'll gain some life back. We'll negate that with a Lightning Strike. Alright, there's a Traxa. Now, let's go ahead and deal 3 to their face. Another 3 to their face. And we should have lethal next turn with Furnace Rains. This is looking great. Yeah, not worried about anything that they can get with Atraxa. So we've got it here. Let's go ahead and take her for ourselves. And swing out. There we go. Alright, and here we are on the play. This looks great. We're going to go ahead and keep. Turn 1, play out the Kamano. Next turn, we can play both Phoenix Chicks. That's going to be great for us. One of them is going to come in with a +1/+1 counter, so we're going to be looking at 3 damage on the board. Alright, Forest and Past. This is looking good. We definitely have a much stronger aggro start. Opponent down at 16 already. Next turn, our Saga's gonna flip, and we're gonna get another 2/2. Alright, Kami of Transcendence. Now we've got a couple of choices here. Here we can either cast the Resolve, or we can play our land and get the Cindermaw out. We're gonna start by swinging, though. Our opponent may choose to block, and they do. Down at 13. I'm gonna play out the Cindermaw here, just to hedge against life gain. Plus, since he doesn't have haste, it's gonna be better to have a creature on the battlefield early. Alright. Double Strike. And Audacity. Okay, so we cannot swing with the Cindermaw. That's okay, though. Let's move to combat. Swing out like this. And then we're gonna cast our Blazing Crescendo right here. Exiling a land to play. Yes, we will. And I'm actually gonna cast the Reckless Impulse as well this turn. Get a land and Ren's Resolve. Perfect. That's our land drop for next turn. We'll see a little bit more in terms of cards. If our opponent taps down with the Geist, we're gonna be in a great spot. Okay, here's the Kami. Yeah. Counter. Okay, he can swing for 10. And I'm okay with that. We'll take all 10 here. Now, opponent's tapped out. And look at that. Let's go ahead and grab the Kami. Move to combat. We've got it! Alright. Alright, we're on the play. I don't like having one land, though. We're definitely going to take the mulligan here. Can go ahead and keep. I'm actually going to bottom a land here. We're going to start with a Phoenix Chick. Get out some of our hasty damage. We have Blazing Crescendo to find us another card off the top. This deck won't need more than 3 lands, so we're in a good spot. Let's play out our other Phoenix Chick while we can. Opponent down at 17. Alright. Blue-white deck. This could be a control deck. Let's go ahead and deal 2 damage. Giant Cindermaw is a great draw for us here. Move to combat. Let's see if they have anything that they want to use during combat. Hold up our combat trick. They do not. Down to 13. Let's cast the Cindermaw. Alright. This looks pretty good. Okay, Mindbreaker. So we're definitely looking at a mill-style deck. Furnace Rains is a good draw for us. Let's move to combat. We're going to swing out here. See if our opponent's going to do anything about the Cindermaw. They are. That's fine for us, though. Blazing Crescendo. Finds a Swift Spear. Deal 5 damage. Opponent down at 8. Let's go ahead and play up the Swift Spear. Four damage. Alright. Let's go to combat. Swing for 4. Opponent's down at 4. We are presenting lethal on board. Ideally, we see our opponent play a blocker here. Yep. Takes 1, gains 2. Opponent's at 5. Yep. Now, I really do want to see our opponent play out a creature here. That would be amazing for us. Doesn't look like it, though. Back up at 7 with Faithful Mending. Yep. There's a Jace. Alright, well, let's move to combat. Swing out. Opponent down at 3. Let's go ahead, cast out another Cindermaw. That's gonna shut off the life gain. We're in a really good spot here. Opponent's gonna need to either clear our board or to play out 3 blockers. Alright, Sunfall will do it. But quite unfortunately for our opponent, if they do choose to make this into their token, they're gonna be in a very tough spot here. They do not. Okay. Now we're gonna wait, move to our end step. Now with our opponent casting Faithful Mending, we can now Lightning Strike. Our opponent's not going to be able to get out of this now. They're tapped down. They're not going to have any 0 mana way to gain life. And we've got it before their life gain goes through. Good game. Alright, here we are, on the draw again. You've got Swift Spear, which is a great turn 1 creature. Crescendo is going to help as well. Let's go ahead and keep this. I like it. See what our opponent's playing. Opponent does take the mulligan. They're down to 6. That's fine by me. We're going to play up the Swift Spear. Since our opponent has no blockers, that's some easy guaranteed damage through. Next turn, with Blazing Crescendo as an option, that's going to be really strong for us. We also have Play with Fire. Let's see what our opponent plays out. Soldier, alright. So our opponent is playing a Soldier's deck. That's fine. I don't like Thalia, since we have a bunch of non-creature spells. So let's go ahead and hit that with Play with Fire, swing in for 2 with Swift Spear. Next turn, we're going to play out the Furnace Punisher. This is going to guarantee at least 2 damage on our opponent. And they're 2 turns out from being able to deal with this. But before we do that, we're going to move to combat. We're going to swing, see if they choose to block. If they do, we'll kill it. They do not. It's just perfectly fine by me. Furnace Punisher time. Opponent's going to be taking 2 damage on each of their upkeeps for at least the next 2 turns, as they're looking for more basic lands. This is a problem that clearly has to be dealt with. And if they do use their resources to deal with the Furnace Punisher, then we're going to be in an even better spot with our Swift Spear and the Blazing Crescendo. Alright. Go ahead and play a land. Phoenix Chick. Let's move to combat. I'm going to swing like this. Looks good to me. Blazing Crescendo. Finding Ren's Resolve. Opponent's now down at 10. It's going to be at 8 after the Punisher. We're in a really good spot here with Furnace Rains and Blazing Crescendo. If we draw another land, we're going to have a whole lot of damage. Yep, looks good. Remember, we only have to get our opponent down to 6 here. Alright, no blocks. This is fine. We can take their Sky Strike Officer with Furnace Rains. That's going to be another 2 damage. If we draw the land, that's going to be 4, 6. That's going to be lethal if we draw the land here. We do not, unfortunately. But I do think we're going to survive another turn. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is cast this Ren's Resolve first. See if we can get some more information on cards that we'll have access to this turn. Okay. Interesting. Now we'll have the 5 lands. I think we will play out the infantry this turn. Move to combat. Swing with just the Phoenix Chick. This is looking good. Opponent down at 7. And then we'll play out the infantry. And we get it. He's going to basically just function as a blocker for us. Opponent's going to be down at 5. And we should have lethal next turn. Having to play it a little slow, but that's okay. Keep in mind, now with Furnace Punisher, all we need is 3 damage to put our opponent into lethal range before their next turn. Okay, Brutal Cathar is going to hit Furnace Punisher. We're actually completely fine with that. Oh, and that's deeply unfortunate. Just the right top deck for them. Alright. Opponent goes first. I actually don't really like this starting hand, so let's go ahead and find something a little bit better. Like this. We're gonna drop the Furnace Punisher. Yep. We're playing into the mirror. Fortunately for us, we are gonna have a stronger start even on the draw with Swift Spear. This is going to definitely give us more potential. Next turn, we have our other Swift Spear and play with fire. Alright, there's Kamano. Fine by me. And a Reinforced Ronin. Yep. Opponent swings out for 3. Now we're going to play out our other Swift Spear. Opponent's tapped out, so we'll just go ahead and play with fire right now. Get those 2 prowess triggers. I like a Lightning Strike on top. Let's go ahead and move to combat. Opponent down at 13. We've now gotten that initial advantage for us. Opponent can... Okay, Feldon. It's a great play. Opponent doesn't have that 3rd land drop, though. Alright, let's move to combat while opponent's tapped out. We're going to swing in with 2 attackers, and I'm actually going to go ahead and use Blazing Crescendo right now. Opponent's now down at 6. Next turn with our land and double Lightning Strike, we'll be able to get it. Right now, it looks like our opponent has 8 damage that I know for sure that they can execute. It would be 10 with play with fire. They used it on a Swift Spear, though. So that means our opponent's not going to be having lethal this turn. We have our land and our 2 Lightning Strikes, so this should be in the bag. Perfect. Yeah, leave back the Swift Spear as a blocker, that's fine by me. And we draw another land just to make sure that we have it. Here's Lightning Strike. And here's a Lightning Strike. Alright, looks like we've even beat the mirror. Alright everybody, I hope you enjoyed watching today. As we saw, this deck is a great deck to start with. It'll stand its own in Standard, needs absolutely no rare wildcards to function, and we can even beat some of the more expensive decks and powerful meta decks. You saw us being able to take that Atraxa and hit our opponent with it. You saw us beating the Mono Red Mirror even though they had Feldon and some of those other rare cards that they could play with. So all in all, this is a perfect place to get started. I'd expect that you'd be able to do really well with this deck right off the bat, and it's got a fairly straightforward game plan. Though it is a little draw dependent, so if you do run out of cards, it can be a little bit frustrating to play into control matchups. But I think that this is a perfect place to get started with Standard on Arena until you can build your collection, grow those wild cards, and then eventually build some other decks. I hope you guys all enjoyed watching today, and I'll see you next time.